The Niben, manned by pilot Topol, was to follow the northeast-pointing waystone. The orders from the Crystal Tower, they were to sail forth for 80 moons and then return to Tel. Only Niben returned to First Hold, laden high with gold and spice and fur and strange creatures, dead and live. Though, alas, old Elnofay Topol never found, he told the tales of the lands he had visited to the wonderment of all. For 66 days and nights he sailed, over crashing waves of dire intent, past whirlpools, through mist that burned like fire, until he reached the mouth of a great bay, and he landed on a sun-kissed meadow of gentle dells. Today we follow the journey of the ancient pilot Topol. We will trek from dell to duff and find ourselves a place to rest that, all divines pleased, he may have found restful. Our first stop along the Yellow Road is the Drunken Dragon Inn. Midway between Bravil, Leyawiin, Gideon, and Stormhold, this somehow still out-of-the-way inn is a safe, friendly stop on a long, long road. It can be found just off the Yellow Road, nestled between two nearby mines and several Imperial Legion forts. There are no direct roads leading from the inn to Blackmarsh to grant it natural foot traffic from enterprising travelers and traders, though it is connected to the Yellow Road. While a daring captain with a land-steady crew could reasonably make the journey from the Panther to the inn, the Drunken Dragon remains hidden in the swamp and would better serve its clientele, placed closer to the main road or to the mouth of the Panther. A closer examination implies it was built to benefit local miners, granting it a lore purpose in that sense. It is also possible that the inn's presence leads to further roads in the future. Quoting Fernand Braudel, there would be no routes if there were no stopping places. Its location score is going to be a 2 out of 5, with an asterisk. For any travelers who are a part of the Imperial Legion, or who do not mind braving the swamp, it may rise up as far as a 4 out of 5, due to the sheer wealth of Imperial forts in the area. The inn's tavern area is well equipped, but with no trainers to be found. It lacks key clientele that may draw others in, and that lack of regulars makes it an unlikely socialization spot. However, the guard presence implies a certain popularity for nearby legionnaires transiting from one fort to another, and the nearby mines would imply that miners may migrate to the inn either to spend the night or to grab a drink after a long shift. The barkeeper is incredibly friendly, and there's nothing really objectionable to be found here, but there's very little to bring someone here either, unless they are already stationed there. Half a point is awarded for projected utility, bringing its service score up to a 2.5 out of 5, but it's hard to justify anything higher. That said, its interior is clean, mostly bug-free, and warmed by a well-tended, inviting fireplace, suggestive of a cozy haven from the typical swamp rain. Despite its sparse clientele, the inn boasts ample conversation zones, including a small reading nook on the second floor and a cozy landing to warm your hands. It's a solid choice for transient soldiers or individual travelers needing to dry their swampy boots. And it is a good fit for any local miners, so it receives a 4 out of 5 in atmosphere score. The Drunken Dragon does also offer a decent variety of rooms, although the lock quality is a little low. Good, consistent decor sets the Drunken Dragon's rooms apart from other inns in the region. Each individual room has a clear purpose and a clear structure. You can tell what sort of traveler each room is suited for. Whether it's for a single individual or a small adventuring party, it isn't difficult to find a room for yourself at the Drunken Dragon. It's really hard to imagine finding something better in the middle of nowhere. It does, however, receive a 4 out of 5 room score. But the demerit on that point reveals the real problem with the Drunken Dragon. There's very little to bring you here. There's only one quest in the game that brings you here, in fact, a Dark Brotherhood quest. You know, a quest line typically reserved for murderers and criminals. If the character that you're playing is an evil character, the Drunken Dragon might get a 4 out of 5, but frankly, only one quest, no trainers. It's hard to justify giving it anything above a 3 out of 5 in quest score. Its inclusion in a very fun questline does, however, secure it a 3 out of 5. Now, something a bit difficult for me to wrap my head around is that the price for a room is 20 gold per night, and that room is admittedly spacious, but it's hard to justify paying so much to stay here. It's hard to justify so many things about this inn, including its existence. But my best supposition is that the Drunken Dragon caters to miners, soldiers, and passing traders. Folk either desperate for a safe bed, desperate to sleep off a long shift, or exhausted from the trek through Argonia. Still, 20 gold a night, middle of nowhere, rooms are above average but not great. The value for staying here is going to be a 1 out of 5. A higher service score, or trainers in the inn, or even more legionnaires may have upped this value, but unfortunately, I cannot give it any higher than a 1. It is the bare minimum, and the cost is above average for its range. While I've said a lot of negative things, it's important to remember that an innkeeper's job is to be trustworthy, reliable, and friendly. And the Drunken Dragon's publican, Andreas Draconis, does manage that. But due to circumstances kind of in his control, he can't be counted on to save the inn's middling score. If you can find a reason to go out of your way, or if you're already traveling this way, the Drunken Dragon presents a decent detour. Given more time to grow and a better proximity to the roadway, the Drunken Dragon's presence might offer new, better inroads into the marsh ahead for any travelers headed that way. But for now, it's going to remain a 2.8 out of 5 overall. Across the Niben is the Border Watch Inn. The Border Watch Inn is the closest a traveler can legally get to Elsewhere without being in Elsewhere. Located in the quaint town of Border Watch, the Border Watch Inn allows you to border watch from within the borders of Border Watch. That way, you can watch the border in comfort and peace. A sitting area outside of the tavern proper makes that possible and improves the experience for travelers who long to share a cozy night beside a warm cooking fire, highlighting the cleanliness of the inn's interior. Ample sitting room, fine conversation pieces, and good company makes the town's premier gathering space even better. A beer of the day keeps things interesting and draws in the local crowd, all of whom were surprisingly welcoming. Its atmosphere scores an easy 5 out of 5. That is admittedly a very good thing because the inn's actual accommodations inside are notably subpar. Characterized by dust, disrepair, and a lack of appeal, one particular room exhibits some pretty avant-garde decor. An overturned table and 2 books craft a unique, but ultimately unattractive guest experience if you're unlucky enough to be stuck in room 2. Unfortunately, the Border Watch Inn does score only a 1 out of 5 in the rooms category. Its service score is not much better. While Sathasa is a lovely host and a decent merchant, there are no trainers here, and the rarest item you're going to find is cheese. Well, unless you do try to buy something from Sathasa, because she does sell a leveled blunt weapon that refreshes when you level up. Unfortunately, it is pretty rare that you won't have something better by the time you crest 50 Mercantile and get it to spawn in her stock. The inn earns 1 point for kindness and a welcoming nature, but it can't rise above a 2 out of 5 in the service category. Still, it is 10 gold a night for a no-frills room, and it's hard to argue with that price point. The convenient location does sort of boost its score a little bit by proxy in the value category. At 10 gold a night, that is a pretty good value even if the room is not great, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 value score. The Borderwatch Inn is located right along the literal border and sandwiched between two of Cyrodiil's major cities. Travelers from Rimmon, Alabaster, and Corinth might stop for the night here before moving on to their final destination, making it slightly more convenient than the other provincial inn on our list, the Drunken Dragon. Its proximity to a Daedric shrine courts any would-be zealots hoping to spend a night with the Mad God, and if it didn't sometimes threaten to rain cats and dogs, it would score a perfect 5. In location, at least. But for now, it's going to sit at a 4 out of 5 location score. But did I mention that you can watch the border from here? Jokes aside, any Sheogorath quest is worth doing, and the one that brings you here is particularly novel and memorable, especially by Elder Scrolls standards. I won't spoil it, but everyone should complete this quest at least once, if not for its content, then for the novel dialogue that accompanies it. It does receive a 4 out of 5 quest score in this sense. All in all, the Borderwatch Inn is a great inn for adventurers, but an ironically poor inn for the wealthy. It's a good fit for the healthy, rugged, and world-varnished traveler who doesn't mind a little bit of dust in exchange for some good company and good vibes. It is, however, the last of the provincial inns in Leyawiin, and that brings us to an important choice. Every traveler passing through the city of Leyawiin is ultimately presented with this choice, between either the Five Claws Lodge and the Three Sisters Inn. If you're a traveler on a budget, only one of those two properties is a realistic option. Thankfully, for those travelers, it is not a bad option by any means. Though the rooms at the Five Claws Lodge are a little bit aged, a little inconvenient, and a little underwhelming, and there's not much variety to be found here, you get what you pay for. 10 gold for a room is never a bad deal, though it's hard to imagine getting a good night's sleep at a place like the Five Claws Lodge. It does still score a 3 out of 5 in the rooms category. Additionally, because it is a 10 gold room, it's going to get a 5 out of 5 in the value category. Because, should you arrive to find your room dirty, the innkeeper does promise you that your room is free. Unless you can find a less problematic town to sleep in, you really cannot beat a free room, justifying that 5 out of 5. In addition, a Fighters Guild quest brings you here, and several quest-related NPCs frequent the inn. Since the local guild halls are right across the square, you're never far from an adventure at the Five Claws, earning it a 4 out of 5 in the questing category. Now, unfortunately, though it is located right outside the gate, the Five Claws Lodge is a convenient stop, but it's also about as far into Leyawiin as certain travelers are going to want to go. In another city, the Five Claws might receive a higher score than 3 out of 5 in location, but for reasons we'll get into later, it is relegated to a 3 out of 5, especially if you happen to be Argonian or Khajiit. On the same note, the atmosphere here is nothing to write home about. The inn's bar is prone to receiving a rowdier crowd than usual, due in part to restless locals from the Fighters Guild who frequent the tavern. It's easy to imagine that sort of rowdiness disrupting a good night's sleep with how close the bar is to the rooming area, and at the same time, I have to admit, you come to expect a certain level of rowdiness in a bar. And, unfortunately, the Five Claws, despite its name, is more of a bar than a lodge. And that does impact its security and safety negatively. Its atmosphere for an inn is only going to be a 2 out of 5. The Five Claws Lodge is a very conditional place to stay. It boasts fresh fish on its menu, though it lacks the kind of je ne sais quoi of a daily beer that you might find in other inns along the road. And frankly, if it weren't for the Border Watch Inn, I might be inclined to be a little bit more forgiving with the Five Claws. Unfortunately, due to the tensions in Leyawiin, it's very hard to be forgiving to anyone, especially given how often trouble comes up in a town like this. If you took the Five Claws and put it in Breville, it would stand out vehemently as a strong contender. But its presence in Leyawiin specifically drags it down. You can't really escape trouble at a place like the Five Claws Lodge, and that does drag it down a bit to a 3.3 out of 5. Now, across the square is a luxurious inn just in the dead center of town, the Three Sisters. The Three Sisters purports itself as a premier inn, and its adjacency to the temple has given it a long-standing presence in County Leyawiin, even if its name and ownership have changed over the 1100 years it has spent inside of the city's walls. While no quests start here, you'll find a variety of quest-related NPCs rotating in or out based on the day from different parts of Cyrodiil. Travelers from multiple different quest lines pass through, and you'll often find a head start on something here. At least one skill trainer does also offer you a head start on a mastery quest, giving it a 4 out of 5 in the questing category. Because you can find those trainers for your light armor, athletics, and mercantile skills within the Three Sisters' spacious interior, it does come across as a little bit of a social hub for the area, amplifying the utility already present. Its status as a home away from home makes it a great inn for travelers and long-term occupants alike, granting it a 5 out of 5 in the service category. Its rooms are luxurious, spacious, and well segregated. And it's clear that by being the only suite in the entire southern half of the map that actually functions as a suite, the room that you can rent from the Three Sisters is especially unique. It earns a 5 out of 5 in the rooms category. A lot of things about the Three Sisters stand out as being unique from a traveler's perspective, and it must seem almost as if the Three Sisters fits that description of all great classical inns of antiquity. Its clientele invariably lends it credence as a gathering spot for the wealthy, the enterprising, and the adventurous. But from a local perspective, it insulates poorly from the racism present in Leyawiin, and it's a little too easy to get the feeling that it's where adventurers go to retire with their too heavy coin. For that, and for reasons we're finally about to get into, it receives only a 3 out of 5 in the atmosphere category, and if you happen to be a non-human or non-elven traveler, that's going to go down to a 1 out of 5. Leyawiin is a very convenient stop for any traveler passing through the southern half of Tamriel, no matter what direction they're headed in. Whether sailing the Niben to reach the Imperial City or merely crossing between Black Marsh and elsewhere, it's hard to deny Leyawiin's appeal. Unfortunately, its status as a cosmopolitan melting pot leaves it with a critical vulnerability. Its countess is famously racist, and the citizens of Leyawiin are more than willing to stir the pot alongside her. The presence of multiple guild halls right across the street from the Three Sisters is very promising, but it loses a point for the danger posed to any traveler who happens to have fur or scales, which is to say, most travelers passing through Leyawiin. In fact, I've taken at least 1 point off every in-town inn for that problem. At least for me, it's very hard to feel comforted and at home when the people around me don't. If you're a part of an adventuring party, it's going to be very hard to settle in at a place like this, no matter how comfortable it seems on the surface, and that does hurt the inn's score. If you're a human with only human friends, the Three Sisters is practically a perfect stay, whether you know it as the Caladas or the Three Sisters. But any just and reasonable traveler who seeks to keep away from trouble may find this inn is worth less than its asking price. Regardless, if you are a human, it scores a 4.2 out of 5. Leyawiin and Blackwood are beautiful regions, with many things to see and many beautiful sights to behold. Though it can be a little bit rainy and sometimes a little downcast for other reasons, there's a lot to love about the stucco architecture of a place like Leyawiin. In another era, another time, it may have been a beautiful sight, and one must imagine old Topol found happiness on his journey north. If you have found happiness watching this video, please leave a like or a comment below agreeing or disagreeing with me. Otherwise, I hope to see you again.